What do you think this is? I'd say one fucked up horror picture. X was directed by Ty West, who directed The Innkeepers, VHS Second Honeymoon. In fact, he was the husband in that particular tape, as well as Cabin Fever 2, Spring Fever, House of the Devil, and it's from A24. And if you think I wasn't excited to see this movie, A24 all around, baby. I need to get more A24 Blu-rays. They've done movies like this, Saint Maud, Midsummer, and from the studio that brought you Hereditary. And it stars Mia Goth, Jenny Ortega, who was recently in Scream, aka Scream 5, if man is still alive, Brittany Snow, Kid Cutie, and Martin Henderson, who was the husband in The Ring, or I think he was the ex-husband. I actually don't totally remember the story, but this is set in 1979, where an adult film crew wants to make it big, and they go into a reclusive area somewhere in Texas outside of Houston. I'm not exactly totally sure where it is located, but it's just in their own Hollywood backlot, and they want to make an adult film and make it big, and everybody has big dreams. There's the experienced Bobby Lane, played by Brittany Snow, who looks exactly the same as she did in the Prom Night remake. If you don't remember the Prom Night remake, one, you could watch my review and avoid watching that absolute schlock fest, and she actually looks exactly, seriously, 14 years after that movie came out, and she doesn't look like she's aged a day. Mia Goth was in the Suspiria remake, or Suspiria, however you want to fucking pronounce it. And Jenna Ortega, and it's a small cast, but it's a bunch of pretty people, and pretty guys, and pretty ladies, and there's a whole bunch of sex, blood, and violence, and I loved every goddamn minute of this. I was fucking stoked when I first saw the trailer. I'm like, A24, oh, okay, cool. Ooh, this looks like a fancy little horror movie. It looks like it's taken inspiration from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then after I watched the movie, I realized it didn't just take inspiration. It hung its body up and was taking pieces off of it like we were at a butcher shop. Now, that's not the worst thing in the world. Ty West, his movies have been a bit uneven. Like, some of them have been really good. House of the Devil is actually pretty good. Cabin Fever 2, I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Cabin Fever 1 in 2005, I thought was shit. And I know I'm going to get a bunch of horror fans upset, but I stand by that. Eli Roth understands horror. He just doesn't really understand that he's not very good at making it. And now that controversial opinion's out of the way, let's talk about this. There's an old couple. The old guy, that's one ugly son of a bitch. That's from Kid Cutie, who plays Jackson. He realizes there's something a little bit wrong here with this area, because there's a swamp nearby. There's a boarding house that they can stay in, and also he says, my wife is not well. She stays in the adjacent house, and it's not well. She gets confused. It happens around night, and from there we find out we get some sex scenes and some stuff like that, and because it's about adult filmmaking. It's not exactly going to be a bunch of teddy bears and other stuff like that, unless you want to see that kind of sex action. If you do, please keep it to yourself. This is just about as stripped down, ironically, as you can get for a horror movie. Again, it does take inspiration from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It does have that gritty feel to it, that grindhouse feel, as it were. Grindhouse in the literal and figurative sense. And it also has a lot of foreshadowing. In fact, it has so much goddamn foreshadowing. The shadow of this movie is cast and causing an eclipse over the rest of the releases. But it sounds like I'm down on the movie. It's self-aware, and it's most importantly funny. It has a lot of dark humor. I, again, had great fun watching this. I was loving every goddamn blood-soaked minute. And even when they were doing the setup, even though I fully recognize that this movie is not going to be for everybody, it's just a whole lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Yes, again, I may end up getting this on Blu-ray. I loved it that goddamn much. A24 has a couple other movies coming out this year. They've really been ramping stuff up. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, Men, which I'm really, really excited for, and also After Yang. So they got a bunch of other movies coming out that I'm willing to dive into, and if this isn't in my top 5 of favorite movies of the year list, then it's going to be a pretty damn good year, because this is right at, if not right near the top, if not right at the top. I fucking loved it. It is by no means, it's by no means something where he's like, oh god, that's so goddamn shocking, like I didn't see that, all these plot twists. There's enough references to other movies, and the way the cast is It was just a bunch of pretty people on a setting, and there's some fucked up shit happening. That's all you fucking need. And since this is good Ty West, when he is allowed to basically, flex his muscles and show that he does understand horror, there was some really, really just great stuff to sink your teeth into. There were plenty of fucked up moments. There were plenty of moments where I'm like, oh shit, I didn't expect, oh no, please, okay, let's not see that. There were a couple particular horrifying visuals, and they actually weren't blood-soaked. I felt like soaking myself in some various fluids, like gasoline, when I saw some things. And if you've seen the movie, you understand. But this is proof that maybe you should, I don't know, don't just trust somebody and go into this weird, just reclusive, ranch area and try to think that you can get away with this stuff and think that there aren't some sinister intentions or some weird shit going on. And maybe the people that you believe are good, maybe they aren't. Maybe the people that you really trust in your inner circle aren't good. Maybe they're not very smart. There aren't a lot of very smart people in this movie. But then again, it is an homage to slashers of the 70s and the 80s. And again, it just has great cinematography, by the way. Great music choices. Everything about this movie is pretty much perfect, despite any of the flaws that it may have. Everything is just a perfect storm of great. I fucking love this. I absolutely would be willing to see this in theaters again, but my time is limited, so I will have to wait until it comes out on Blu-ray, when I will inevitably get it, and I will probably just get every A24 movie I can under the sun. It would be hard to get them above the sun. How you get movies up there, I don't know, but I digress. It's great stuff. It's just fucking great and just so worth your time. It is just so good. And once the violence really ramps up, oh boy, does Ty West do the violence right. The gore factor is great. It just has that great... We don't get Leatherface, by the way. We don't get that. We actually get something a little bit, not quite as fucked up, but, pretty fucked up. We get something just, whoa, holy shit, this is happening. So yeah, it's absolutely great. It is really, really fucking incredible. There is a bit of foreshadowing in the movie, as I mentioned. I want to be in the movie, Lorraine, Jenna Ortega's character says, well, you can't. Her friend RJ, or her boyfriend RJ, Owen Campbell, says you can't, the script just can't change halfway through, or the story just can't change halfway through. Well, you liked Psycho. Yeah, but that was a MacGuffin, the plot led to this and stuff like that. I mean, and that was practically hitting you over the head with foreshadowing, like, oop, something different's gonna happen. But it was just with the right twist and the right self-awareness and everything, this movie got it. This movie wasn't insulting. At least to me, it wasn't. I can understand why some people might not like it. It does take a bit to get going, but trust me, once it does, there's enough foreshadowing, great suspenseful music, great cinematography once again, and the performances were what they were, but they were meant to just be people that were eventually going to meet a demise. Maybe we get a final person, maybe we don't. But I am going to get into spoilers here in a minute. I would absolutely recommend, if you've loved A24 movies in the past, please check this out. It's well worth it. It's out in theaters. And the more people to see stuff like this in theaters, the more movies like this will get released in theaters, and we can watch that. Maybe we can keep theaters alive for longer than another few years before inevitably everything is a streaming service and we're paying $200 a month to watch maybe 5 movies. So now I'm going to get into spoilers. Okay, so the old couple that's there. It turns out that the husband has a bad heart and can't satisfy his old wife. His old wife that eventually sees this, this film being made and everything, and she gets inspired by, well, mainly Maxine, Mia Goth's character, and the fact that she kind of reminds her of herself. And in fact, actually, if you look at the makeup of the old woman and you look at Mia Goth, there's actually similarities. And that's a kind of nice little touch, I'll say, right there. And what ends up happening is, it turns out that, well, this old lady wants to be satisfied. The husband has a weak heart and can't, fuck her. And also they're about 8,000 years old. And after seeing this adult film stuff, we get to see some really, really weird shit. But before that, we see a swimming scene in a swamp nearby where there's a crocodile. I wonder if something's going to happen with that crocodile. It's not going to get fucked. Don't worry. It's not that kind of movie. The old lady eventually snaps, kills RJ, starts killing people. And it turns out that her and the husband are in on this and do this to people. Jenna Ortega's character gets locked in the basement at one point, and the scream, if you've seen the trailer, the scream that she just lets out, and they cut some scenes and everything into it, She's screaming because there is somebody strung up with his dick out and shackles on his feet. It turns out that, well, they're probably using people as sex slaves because he can't satisfy his wife, and his wife is a sex, addict. Even at her advanced age of about 800 years old. But man, this movie just gets better and better as it goes on. Like, it's so obvious how these people are going to end up dying, but it just ends up being so satisfying seeing stupid people die. And also, you see this old couple, they've been doing this way too goddamn long. Mia Goth's character is the only one living, and she ends up getting, basically being the final girl. There was actually one pretty good moment with Martin Henderson's character where he steps on a nail with a board end or whatever. Kang and Kodos are just freaking out, and he ends up looking in these holes in the barn and gets a pitchfork right through the eyes. Fucking satisfying death. Kate Cudie's character ends up getting a shotgun blast. We don't really see all that much of that. Brittany Snow ends up getting tossed into the swamp at night, and the alligator or the crocodile rather, just happens to be there and says, munch. And the old lady says, oh, I hate blondes. But then, after Lorraine's character gets freed from the basement, because she gets locked in there at one point, that's how she screams, where she screams and where she sees that guy that guy's strung up. She ends up getting a shotgun blast, double-barrel shotgun blast, because the husband ends up shooting her as she's escaping the house. Mia Goth's character is like, what the hell's going on with this? She's got a gun. Oh, is the gun loaded? No, of course the gun's not loaded. The husband's trying to bring in the old man's trying to bring in, Lorraine's dead body, but she gasps. And that's enough to send, even with the stress of having fucked his wife. He actually did fuck his wife just a little bit before that. That was a scene at one point where I said, I'm going to put gasoline on myself and light myself on fire because I don't want to see this. It was disgusting. But that was the idea. It's supposed to be the grindhouse thing. And then he's already stressed enough. He brings her body in, and she, does this gasping like, oh, it's like a final gasp. And that's enough. It just sends him over the edge, and he has a heart attack and everything. And old lady's like, oh, please help me. He's having a heart attack. And throughout this entire movie, by the way, I should say this before we get to the final reveal, there's this televangelist guy. It kind of looked like Ross Perot doing religious work. Seriously, the ears weren't quite as big because they could fit inside the screen. It wasn't quite Paul Bosch, even though this was outside of Houston. And again, the ears could fit inside the screen. If you know who the hell Paul Bosch is, I love you guys for that. Any Houston people will actually know who Paul Bosch is. Anybody else? Not likely unless you live in Texas. Whole point of this is, this guy's talking about like all the sin and everything, and people turning away from sin, and he's had family members that have turned to sin, but he is going to be a righteous person now, and he's going to teach the word of the Lord. What happens is Maxine ends up trying to shoot the old lady. Well, that doesn't work because there's no guns in the bullet. Or no guns in the bullet. That would be hard to do. No bullets in the gun, but old lady picks up the shotgun, but because she's 800 years old, she tries to shoot at her. Maxine ducks, and the shotgun just sends her. Like, it sends her, like, comically out the door. Like, the screen door just flies off like the Hulk. And then she, like, has her hip broken and stuff like that. She can't get off the ground because, again, 800 years old. And then Maxine gets in the car, and she leaves. All while doing coke. She did coke in the first couple scenes of this movie and kept doing coke throughout it because why not be coked up out of your goddamn mind to deal with some fucked up old people that do this shit? And then the final reveal, the old man was talking about his daughter. And his daughter, Maxine, who turned to a life of sin. There you go. Fucking perfect. As great as these movies, I'm putting these up again. As great as these fucking movies, this was just got A plus for X. It's great. Absolutely go watch it. This was fucking incredible. I loved every goddamn minute of it. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.